Hey, kids! Sorry, that was my Krusty the Clown impression. I haven't watched Simpsons in a while. Is it still on? Anyway. All right. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to try to restore some of my credibility here. My name is Jason Miller, PhD, all-around good guy, and enjoy the barbell like you do. That's why you're watching these videos, right? Or you want to know about nutrition. That's the crux of my videos. And so let's get to it. Let's talk about today's topic, which is a sets and rep schemes video. It seems like most of you have enjoyed those. Many of you enjoy those. If you haven't, check them out. It's a playlist I'm adding to with this video. Different sets and rep schemes. Wave training, cluster sets. The most popular thing was myo reps, right? A lot of people are interested in those because of time efficiency. And so be sure to check that out. Today I'm talking about compound sets and giant sets. All right. And if you know what a superset is, and I'm going to talk briefly about that as well. If you know what a superset is, you're familiar with the compound. Now, compound sets can be sets that combine many different things, okay? So a compound set could be lifting a heavy back squat, 80% of your max, 3 from failure, so not going to failure, and then utilizing post-activation potentiation or performance enhancement. See, post-activity performance enhancement is what it's been changed to, but okay. Anyway, we can argue whether there's a PAP or not. The point is that the squat will enhance the jump. So given 2 minutes, 4 is best, but who's got time for that? You jump, you or whoever, does a box jump or something similar to the movement pattern as the squat, and you jump higher. And that's been chronicled acutely as being beneficial. That actually happens. That phenomenon occurs where you jump higher, whether it's a warm-up effect, a neurological effect, or both, which is more than likely. Anyway, that's a compound set too. I'm talking about compounds, though, in the context of gaining muscle mass and gains, okay? When to use them, what is a compound in this particular context, and what's a giant set? So let's talk about it. If you haven't already, by the way, subscribe to my channel and smack the bell, just because you should. That's what I was told to say by the YouTube people who say that's how you get lots of YouTube followers. And then like this video, but again, as always, you're more than welcome to watch it first before you make that kind of commitment. All right. So let's look at the setup of a compound set and what it is and why you might actually use it. Here is some combination of exercise. So if exercise A and exercise B, this could be a agonist antagonist superset. So for example, you might do a bench or a DB press, so horizontal pressing, with a rowing exercise, like a horizontal pull. So and you would go back and forth. So you do your, let's say, dumbbell bench, you do your set of 10, and then you'd go, you don't have to like sprint over there, but you'd go or change the weight or grab the dumbbells, whatever. We go right into the dumbbell work. So a DB row, maybe I'll do a video on this specifically, and then you'd rest every round of superset. Okay, so you might rest 2 minutes between each, 2 to 3 minutes between each round. And the same kind of issues with the super will apply to a compound, and that is, this is very helpful, especially for people who've been training for a while. If you haven't been training, the fatigue tends to ramp pretty quick. But if you have been training, you should be able to tolerate it enough that there is even at least one study, I can't remember off the top of my head, that actually doing supers was more beneficial. Probably because of the warm-up effect, maybe some neuroactivation, relaxation / activation. Right, we can conjecture all that we want about why, but it appears that both exercises are enhanced by putting them together. So that could be beneficial. But again, if you're not a trained person, it's better just to do all exercise A all the way through, especially for compound movements. Buys and tries, maybe you can get away with it, but when I program for people just starting out, I'll super, maybe I'll have one super in, but they're sometimes not even related. So it'd be like a reverse hyper leg swing and some biceps curls. So something not even closely related, something that could be followed. But that's a traditional super. When we talk about compounds in the context we're talking about in this video, this is where the exercise, though, would have the same muscle groups involved. So, for example, you might have a compound movement like the bench, DB, or barbell, and then follow that up with some mid-level chest fly. So those are both chest exercises. One of them is a compound movement, though. One is a single joint or isolated joint or accessory, whatever words you want to use, that supports exercise A. Now, you could do a barbell bench and a DB 45-degree incline bench, okay? But just know when you do that, the fatigue cost of doing 2 compound movements, so multiple joint movements in a row, is going to be much greater. The whole point of a compound set structure is that you are trying to target a specific muscle, okay? You're trying to bolster the volume that that muscle is exposed to. How do you build muscle mass? What's the number one driver? Not the only driver. Okay, I think people are getting carried away with this a little bit, but not the only driver. But the number one driver of muscle mass is volume, total sets. Okay, total repetitions as a result of more sets, or however you want to configure it, is just more total repetitions in a training session. Okay, and so if I want to really target the chest, let's say I want to bring my chest up using bro talk. Okay, and so I bench and get my 3 sets of 10, and then I'm going to hit a mid-level chest fly for another 3 sets of 12 or so, and then I'm going to go back. So you would do this exercise and then go right to exercise B. You don't have to like sprint over there to go do it, but hit that extra, and then you do your 2 to 3 minutes rest. Now you can imagine that exercise A is going to be, depending on the combination, could be negatively affected by what you did in exercise B. You're going to have the chest fatigue a lot faster than it would without this compound movement. That's why this is best reserved for individuals who have been training for a little while. How long is a little while? I'd go at least 3 months before you'd put in a compound. And you're built, and if you're not, it's one of those things too. If you're already seeing gains, you're already happy, like you're getting stronger in the bench press, and you know that you're filling out in the chest, don't bother doing this. Like, there's no need to, add a little extra when you don't have to. Always do the minimum. That's kind of my approach with training, is do the minimum. Okay, if you can get away with the traditional setup, then do it. I tend to put some of the stuff in over time too. It's harder when you remote coach, but just as a way of entertainment, and that sounds really weird, but engagement with the program. It's like just doing bench over and over again can get pretty old. But now if I put in a compound, this could be something that stimulates some excitement about the program. And yes, there's more fatigue potentially in the chest, but that's really fantastic because I wanted to get a good chest pump and so on. All right, now what would be a more challenging compound, and I mean in a bad way, is if exercise B was a triceps exercise. This is where you have to have a little bit of knowledge about what muscles fail the first when it comes to a certain compound movement. Triceps and anterior delta are a big part of a bench press, along with the chest, okay? But triceps in particular, I mean, when do most people get stuck on a bench? Most people, is about halfway up. That's triceps, when the triceps are really doing a lot of the work. And so doing a triceps exercise here could be done. You can do that, but just know that the bench press is going to be even more negatively impacted than if you did a chest type of one. So that might not be a good combination here to do the triceps with the bench. All right. So, you'll get a good chest pump, and yes, it'll reduce some of it'll increase the fatigue for the bench press. But the good news is that too, depending on what is stronger in your body, if the chest needs to come up a little bit, it'll get extra volume. But if perhaps the chest is so much more stronger than the triceps, that it's not really getting trained from the bench as much because the triceps are the weak link, then again, this could be a way to bolster that muscle. All right. Muscle in this case is the chest. We could put this in a context of like a back squat. Obviously, you could do some extra quad work or some extra glute work in between if you thought that was important to bring up quads. But just know that, you are going to impact the performance of the squat. I think some exercises, and I say think here, okay, and depends on the range of individual we're talking about. Somebody who's really used to pain and suffering and have been training a long time probably could do something like that and see some benefit. But when you start incorporating some of the big lower body compound movements, you may have to ask yourself, just like talking about, do I have to do this? Do I really need to do this in sequence? I mean, is a squat and a leg press really going to hit the quads sufficiently by themselves? Well, yeah, you're going to get quite a bit of activation. Now, you could follow up with some sets to failure, high rep sets to failure in a leg extension, right? And I just say failure there because that would be the hardest thing you can do. I'm not a big failure person all the time, but maybe you do 2 more sets of leg extension and the last sets to failure, which is more what I typically recommend, instead of compounding them. Okay, so you got to use your brain here a little bit. It's not like I'm just going to throw stuff together and I'll get super jacked. No, you have to do what makes sense. I think for a lot of upper body movements, this could be very beneficial. How's that? But many of the lower body movements, the compound exercises are activating the muscles that are being targeted so well already, it may not be necessary to create a compound. So that's why you'll see the compounds typically more in the upper body than the lower. All right, giant sets. Now we're just basically adding in another exercise in a sequence. So if we take the horizontal pressing, we could do a vertical pressing. You could do an overhead press, then you could do some side laterals, and then you could do some front delts or anterior delts, okay, depending on what you want to call it. Now you might be like, well, the side laterals aren't the same muscles, isn't the same part of the deltoid that's being worked on as you know, the overhead pressing and the front raise or the anterior delts, right? And that's true, but you're still getting an overall pump on the shoulder. One of my favorite compounds is we call it a complex, is you know, the multi-directional shoulder work. So you would do front raise, lateral raise, and then post delt, right? So you're hitting all the aspects of the deltoid, even though that you're not hitting one aspect specifically over and over again. And I know a lot of people say don't do anterior delts, don't do front delts if you do a lot of pressing anyway. Fine, but what if you need to bring your anterior delt? I say front or anterior, I usually say anterior, but anterior delts up. Well, then this might be a good idea. What if you're trying to improve your bench press? Then maybe work on your anterior delts. Maybe that's the weak link in your you know, in the press. And so put them in a giant or as part of a compound, right? Super, okay? So I hope that makes sense. When to use this and when to not. Just know the fatigue's going to get high in this sequence. So this is not something you probably want to do all the time, but maybe you could do a cycle of doing some compounds. That's what when I tend to do this, I use it. You'll see a lot of bodybuilders use compounds, and they may do it in such a way that could be one set to failure for one exercise, like Dory and like the 1x20 program, which I have a review on. The same kind of deal where it's kind of like, well, I'm only doing one exercise, but yeah, but you're doing multiple exercises for the same pattern. Okay, so you could have basically a circuit. You could call it a giant set if you want to, but a circuit that it's just all horizontal pulling and it's all different exercises. Obviously, you need to feel very competent in every single one of those exercises. Like if you're getting on there, you're like, well, I don't know what my weights are for this. It's a seated, plate loaded row, and you're, horizontal row, and you're like, I don't really know the configuration. I don't know weights. Okay, then don't do this yet, because you want to be able to move from one exercise to the next, and know what weight you need to get in order to hit a desired rep range to do something like that. So there's a lot of options here. I had a comment, which was a good one, on one of the videos about, when you're messing with all these sets and reps schemes and adjusting rest period, I mean, you kind of end up in the same place. And my answer to that is kind of, right? Kind of. So you could say, well, why don't I just do every exercise in order? Don't I get the same amount of volume? And my answer would be, yes, that's exactly correct. However, and that's the bulk of it. That's like saying, I'm going to take a supplement for your diet, but you eat cheeseburgers and you never eat anything that is green unless it's an M&M, right? I mean, like, the supplement isn't going to make that big of a difference. You need to address the 98% that had to do with your diet, and then the 2% of the supplement is actually beneficial. It's kind of like the meme with the branched chain amino acids, right? Somebody's trying to put out a fire, with this little garden hose with the branched chain amino acid, when you should have the fire hose, which is a full whey protein. Okay, we want to address the big things first, and the big thing would be accumulate volume. And if you can't accumulate volume by maintaining the load to some degree from set to set, then don't use compounds yet. But if you're to the point where, like, okay, I can hit these volumes. In fact, I'm getting some pretty high volumes. Now I can maybe work that extra. This is my numbers, okay? Extra 5% to 8% that go into failure and this metabolic signaling generates. Maybe I'm to that point where I need to do that. So if you watch some of these, pro bodybuilders, again, a lot of them are on anabolic steroids and so forth, so they can recover from these type of sessions too. So keep that in mind. But they'll do some of these sets to failure, and they'll do giant sets and circuits and things like that. That'll target one muscle and just completely obliterate it. Now, again, they can recover from that. And if you're not there yet, then don't do that. And certainly, anabolic steroids are going to make that recoverability much, much higher. Okay, so use these compounds with care. Use them wisely. Don't use them if you're getting started. Same with giant sets. But if you get to the point you're like, I'd really like to bring up X muscle, delts, whatever. Again, it's more useful in the upper body. I'm not saying you can't use it for the lower body, but it's more useful just because of the amount of muscle mass that's involved. The lower body usually gets plenty of work just by doing your basic exercises in some sort of sequence, maybe a small compound like I mentioned before, or I'll call it a backside compound. So maybe you have 3 sets of the squat that are your heavy work sets of volume, and then you might get total 5 sets on the squat, and you're going to compound those last 2 sets with a leg extension. So you're willing to take the hit in terms of quality. You already got 3 quality sets in for the first part, but now you're gonna combo. You're going to do a compound with those last 2 sets that could basically be drop sets at this point, in load, and combine them with a leg extension for some compounds. So anyway, you could do something like that. But, you know, it's a good approach when you're ready for it. It's a good approach when you need some more stimulation and you know your nutrition and everything else is in order to be able to recover it, because fatigue is going to ramp quickly. Use in spurts. Don't use all the time. It's possible this could be helpful. I say that with a caveat. If you only had one time a week to hit chest and your time was very limited, you might use a compound, because now you can really hit a particular muscle group with a lot of volume in a shorter period of time, aka training density. And so this could be a strategy as well. Okay. I think I lost my thought too on, you know, why do all these things? One of the comments was, you know, why adjust all these things? Because again, it depends on the situation when you use these particular tools. Sorry, I bounced around there. I rambled just a little bit. Use the tool when it's appropriate to use it. How's that? And compound sets, giant sets, again, are one of those tools, especially for building muscle mass in this particular context, that are very helpful. Okay, very helpful. I don't use them all the time for individuals and myself, but there are times I have. All right, I'm just talking in circles at this point. Again, hopefully you've liked this video, and if you did, you know, like it and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one.